got to know whether or not they're presidents to trust.
Read my lips. No.
American people have voted to make a new beginning.
There is no limit to the greatness of America.
Yes, we can.
Welcome to Planet America. I'm Kim Landers.
And I'm Chaz Licciardello.
Coming up on the show, former Democrat presidential candidate Michael Dukakis with his take on the not-so-great debate.
And we talked to John Hewson, a man who knows far too much about elections and debates to be a pundit on our show, but we'll make an exception just for today. But first, time for Kim to show John how news is done.
Well, heading the news from Planet America, it's 1 down and 2 to go for Barack Obama and Mitt Romney. Denver, Colorado was the setting for the first presidential debate between the two candidates. The 90-minute exchange covered the standard territory of taxes, the economy and healthcare. The reviews are in and most of them do not rate the president's performance highly.
We've seen this model work really well in Massachusetts because Governor Romney did a good thing, working with Democrats in the state to set up what is essentially the identical model, and as a consequence, people are covered there. No, I think I had 5 seconds before you interrupted me.
The administration has cut the number of permits and licenses in half.
4 years ago, I said that I'm not a perfect man and I wouldn't be a perfect president, and that's probably a promise that Governor Romney thinks I've kept.
Well, trailing in the polls, it was make or break time for Mitt Romney, and he made the most of it, appearing relaxed and even cracking a few jokes.
And congratulations to you, Mr. President, on your anniversary. I'm sure this was the most romantic place you could imagine, here with me. So Mr. President, you're entitled as a president to your own airplane and to your own house, but not to your own facts. Look, I got 5 boys. I'm used to people saying something that's not always true, but just keep on repeating it and ultimately hoping I'll believe it. But that is not the case. I've been in business for 25 years. I have no idea what you're talking about. I maybe need to get a new accountant. Virtually everything he just said about my tax plan is inaccurate.
All right,
so if the tax plan he described were a tax plan I was asked to support, I'd say absolutely not.
Well, the majority of pundits declared a clear victory for Mitt Romney. And 2 snap polls taken straight after the debate show voters thought the Republican nominee beat the president on style and substance. The CNN ORC survey found 67% of registered voters who watched the debate picked Romney as the winner, with 25% backing Obama. The CBS News snap poll of uncommitted voters had 46% giving the win to the challenger, 22% went with the president, while 32% called it a tie.
Look, it was a big result in the CNN poll especially, but I would watch out for that one if I was you guys out there, because if you look at the fine print, you'll see that the people they rang were 100% Southern, 100% white, 100% over 50 years old, and mostly male. Now, I think Romney pumped Obama in that debate, but I'm going to believe R. Kelly can fly before I believe that poll, so I just forget that one.
Well, on the eve of the debate, a gaffe by Vice President Joe Biden was hogging the headlines. Speaking at a campaign event in North Carolina, he seemed to suggest the middle class had been buried during the Obama administration.
This is deadly earnest. How they can justify raising taxes in the middle class has been buried the last 4 years.
His Republican rival Paul Ryan was quick off the mark, trying to gain some political mileage for his team.
Vice President Biden just today said that the middle class over the last 4 years has been, quote, buried. We agree. That means we need to stop digging by electing Mitt Romney the next president of the United States.
And those two will go head-to-head in the only vice presidential debate in Danville, Kentucky, next Friday, our time.
Yeah, and what we call a gaffe is what Joe Biden calls speaking. So that's right, I'm very much looking forward to that debate. Could be interesting.
Well, Mitt Romney has revealed a little more this week about how his tax policy might work. He's floated the idea of capping federal income tax deductions at $17,000. The Republican nominee has promised to slash income tax across the board by 20%. And he says he'll pay for his cuts by closing a number of loopholes and deductions, although he hasn't spelt out which ones. The Tax Policy Centre has estimated the price tag for that plan would be around $360 billion in the first year, or $5 trillion over a decade.
And this was a really interesting report, actually, because regardless of what Mitt Romney said during the debate, he has been promising tax cuts that would add up to $5 trillion. That was not a misstatement by Obama, despite the clip we played before from Romney. And Romney has been saying he would pay for these tax cuts by closing loopholes which he wouldn't specify, as you said. Now, that's dodgy, because the reason those tax loopholes are there is because they're popular. They're mortgage deductions, charity exemptions, research subsidies, etc., etc. They're the kinds of things people like, which means you think that Romney was eventually going to pass a massive tax cut for the rich that he just doesn't pay for at all, just like the Republicans did under Bush. That's why this proposal is great to see, because it's practical, it's smart. Capping tax deductions at $17,000 means he doesn't need to get rid of any particular deduction. It's a brilliant way to save money. The question is, how much money? Now, according to the Tax Policy Centre, it's going to save $1 to $2 trillion, which still leaves a $3 to $4 trillion hole to fill out of the tax plan. But it's at least a step forward, and I'm going to take what I can get.
A judge has delayed the controversial law in Pennsylvania requiring voters to show photo ID until after Election Day on November the 6th. Now, the ruling is a setback for Republican officials in the state who had been hoping it would help deliver Pennsylvania to Mitt Romney. Supporters of the law say it will ensure only those legally eligible to vote can cast ballots. Critics claim it's designed to keep out minority voters who typically support the Democrats. Civil rights lawyers have welcomed the decision, saying nobody should be disenfranchised because they don't have ID.
Appears as though there are certain politicians that see political advantage to taking certain people, namely people that are poor, people that are minority, people that are elderly, students, out of the political process.
Should be said, by the way, that the judge was not opposed to the spirit of the law. He just felt it was being administered in an overly hasty way, and that endangered the vote of thousands of people. So hopefully, if Pennsylvanians are seriously worried about voter fraud, they can implement a voter ID law fairly and thoroughly over a number of years. That way it won't disenfranchise anyone in the process, I say extremely naively.
Bipartisanship.
Yeah.
Well, the latest opinion polls show it's still anyone's race, although the president does remain in front. The most recent Gallup tracking poll, taken just before the debate, has Barack Obama 4 points ahead on 49% to Mitt Romney's 45%. The Rasmussen tracking poll for the same period has the incumbent up by just 2, 49 to 47%.
A couple of polls that caught my eye, Kim. Firstly, a great example of just how important media coverage of the debates is. Now, in 2004, political scientists got some people to just watch the Kerry-Bush debate. Then they got some people to watch the debate and NBC's analysis, and then they got some people to watch the debate and CNN's analysis. Now, if we go to the laptop, the people who watched just the debate said Kerry won 48 to 24. The people who watched the debate and NBC's analysis said Bush won 50 to 17%. And the people who watched the debate and CNN's analysis said Kerry won 43 to 19%. They all saw the same debate, very different results. Now, these are the people who actually watched the debate themselves, as opposed to hearing about it secondhand. So you can see the media's reaction is everything. And therefore, regardless of what he said, even if he was rubbish, if the media says Mitt Romney won the debate, Mitt Romney won the debate. Yep. Now, secondly, this was a pretty big poll number I saw from the Washington Post. When asked, who do you think better understands the economic problems of people in this country? Obama won 52% to 39% 2 days ago. Now, that's what you get when you spend months attacking Romney for his career at Bain and his taxes, not to mention the secret 47% tape. That's a big poll number. And to end the polls, I have two very, very not big poll numbers. They're back-to-back here in the same Washington Post poll. If we go to the laptop, they are: whose music playlist would you rather listen to, and who would you rather see as a contestant on Dancing with the Stars?
I love Dancing with the Stars.
Well, you should vote in that poll. Obama fans will be very pleased to see, even though he can't win a debate, he can win both those crucial questions. Yay.
Well, John Barron has been stateside this week, and he joins us now in Washington a little earlier than his normal call time for the show. John, I don't think you're in your PJs still. No, that's good. If you're still awake now, what did you make of the debate?
Well, it was a very interesting contest and a very subdued Barack Obama. Certainly, Mitt Romney came out of the gate and he went for the president's throat in an affable and surprisingly humorous way, all on top of the policy detail. Incredibly well drilled, sharp in his attacks, and President Obama really looked professorial, testy, and as though he didn't want to be there.
John, we'll get into the debate analysis a little bit later on, but as you know, I'm an avid watcher of Glenn Beck's Fox News show, at least when it was on, and I particularly loved what he could do with a piece of chalk. I'm talking about his chalkboard there, by the way. Can we see some of Glenn Beck's handiwork? That's the one. That's the chalkboard right there. That will do. Now, John, I believe you had a close encounter with the famous Glenn Beck blackboard this week. Tell us.
It was the funniest thing, guys. I was doing an interview earlier this week with Grover Norquist, one of the most powerful men in the United States. He's head of the anti-tax movement that gets Republicans to sign up to the anti-tax pledge. And I was with one of his minders, and I walked into this room where we were doing the interview. There was a chalkboard, and I just joked, "Oh, you've got Glenn Beck's chalkboard here." And he said, "Yeah, how did you know? You can recognise his handwriting, can you?" Turns out it was the chalkboard that when Glenn Beck got the flick from Fox News, he gave it to Grover Norquist. So funnier than fiction.
We won't ask you how much you paid for it. John Barron, he'll be joining us a little bit later in the show again from DC. He's taking a little nap now. Well, former Massachusetts Governor Michael Dukakis certainly knows a thing or two about how presidential debates can change a campaign. And he was the Democrat candidate running against George Bush Sr. in 1988 when he created one of the most memorable debate moments with his calm response to a devastating question about the death penalty. Now, John, you've been speaking to Governor Dukakis about that debate.
Yeah, just off the red eye back from Boston, and we talked about that famous 1988 debate. Kitty Dukakis, who became at the centre of that debate, was also with Governor Dukakis at his office. These days, he's a humble professor of political science at Northeastern University, but he had a lot of interesting things to say about his run in 1988 and this year's election as well. Most people are saying Mitt Romney had a big win. How did you see it?
Look, it's not a revelation that Romney can talk. It's his performance that's the problem. I mean, there's a reason Romney is 30 points behind Obama in the state of Massachusetts. We saw the guy in action. And one of the things that I think the Obama campaign has got to do is to help people understand that Romney's record when it came to creating jobs in Massachusetts was the 4th worst in the United States of America. We were 47 out of 50. Now, this is the guy that's telling us that he's going to transform the economy and create 12 million jobs and all that kind of stuff. And, of course, it never happened. And when he left the state's infrastructure, which is an essential part, obviously, of any economic strategy, was an absolute wreck. So we've seen him in action. And, yes, he can talk. But it's in the performance that he's lacking badly, believe me.
We also thought that Barack Obama could talk as well. Was he just a bit rusty last night? What was going on?
I don't know this, but I understand that his approach was to try to have a conversation with the American people and be less combative. Might have been a good idea, but, and by the way, I've had my own troubles in presidential debates, so I'm very much aware of the perils and pitfalls, but he's going to have to engage Romney aggressively and vigorously in the next 2 debates, and he'll do so. I don't think there's any question about it.
You talk about your presidential debate experiences in 1988. I think you're one of, by my count, 13 people alive that knows what Mitt Romney and Barack Obama went through last night. Can you describe what it's like? Just how tough is it?
Well, remember, most of us who run for the presidency have done a lot of debating in our careers. So it's not as if this is a new experience. On the other hand, you know that you're going to be watched by 100 million people. I had a good first debate, not a good second debate. And I think part of the problem in my case was that I was a little stale in the second debate, a little too much rehearsing. I mean, if I had to do it over again, I would have had much less of that kind of thing and simply done what Jack Kennedy used to do, which is to sit around a table with a bunch of advisors and just have them throw questions at him. But you try to do the best you can. Everybody wants to know who wins and who loses. Actually, I don't know how much impact these debates have. I remember Ronald Reagan did a disastrous job on his first debate against Mondale. I mean, he was old, he was fumbling, he was confused. Everybody said, what's happened to the guy? He did a much better job in the second debate, and he won decisively. So they're a factor, no question about it. But winning the presidency is a lot more than just having a debate or two.
Now, there is that famous question that you got from Bernard Shaw in that debate. He asked you, what would you do as an opponent of the death penalty if your wife was raped and murdered? And your answer, a lot of people criticised as being kind of a little bit heartless.
Right.
When that question hits you, are you thinking in that few microseconds, how do I answer this question?
No, if you're an opponent of the death penalty, as I have been all my life, and I happen to be married to somebody who's a strong opponent of the death penalty, you're asked that question a million times. And I think my problem was that I answered it as if I had been asked it a million times. And unfortunately, a lot of people are watching you for the first time. They've never heard you answer that question. Now, having said that, I didn't lose the presidency because of that question. And I thought, by the way, it was a perfectly legitimate question. Some people said Shaw was being unfair. I thought it was a perfectly legitimate question. I lost that election because I made a decision, it was my decision, that I would not respond to the Bush attack campaign. And the lesson of 1988 is that if the other guy's going to come at you, you'd better be ready with a carefully thought-out strategy for dealing with that attack campaign. And if possible, turning it into a character issue when the guy's doing it. And it was my decision, nobody else's. I'm a positive guy. I run a very positive primary campaign. I thought that's what the American people were looking for. But Bill Clinton, a few years later, did not make the same mistake, even though the Bush attack campaign against Clinton was every bit as tough, if not more so, than it was against me. And that really was a nearly fatal mistake that I made in that campaign.
Like Mitt Romney, you're a former governor of the state of Massachusetts. He's within maybe 2 or 3% of becoming the next president of the United States. What sort of a president do you think he would be?
I shudder to think of Romney in the White House.
Why?
Now, I don't think he's going to win. But if he does, all I can tell you is that I hope he starts sounding a little more like the Mitt Romney of 20 years ago. Can he do that in the party that he is leading these days? It's going to be very difficult. You have some very extreme right-wingers in the Republican Party who essentially have taken control of the party. And on foreign policy, he's a disaster. I mean, some columnists the other day said that every time he picks up foreign policy, he breaks it. And I have no he's surrounded by Bushies, the folks that gave us Bush's disastrous foreign policy. And they're all back, this time surrounding Romney. He doesn't have a lot of background in foreign policy. And everything we've seen so far raises very serious questions as to whether he really understands today's world.
What kind of a president do you think Mitt Romney would be? Because some Massachusetts Democrats have even told me that he wasn't a bad governor. You've been a governor of this state. When you hear Democrats around here saying that maybe Mitt Romney would be okay as a president, maybe he could get things done through Congress in a way that Obama hasn't been able to do, is that a concern to you?
First, I don't know who these Democrats are because they could have been conscious when Romney was here. And his signature issue, that is, he was going to get the economy of the country moving again, and he's going to create 12 million new jobs. Given his performance here, as well as his policies, I mean, what he and Ryan are proposing these days is warmed over Herbert Hoover. I mean, it's what we had in 1929 that plunged us into the worst depression in American history. So I don't quite know what they're talking about. The one thing he did, which was commendable, was at least getting a process going for creating what is now our healthcare system, and curiously enough is the model for a national plan that he opposes. If you can explain that to me, let me know. But even then, after months of debate and discussion and finally compromise, at the 11th hour, Romney, now a candidate for the presidency, vetoed that provision of the bill which required non-insuring employers to contribute at least something to the insurance pool if they weren't prepared to insure their employees. I mean, at the heart of the bill. Now, he was hugely overridden. But it's just another example of this guy shifting and moving depending on how the political winds are blowing. And if he does win, I assume we're going to have a Republican Congress. No moderate, even a Republican moderate, is going to get anything through that Congress of the kind that these people think he might do. It just isn't going to happen.
Finally, Mike Dukakis, what's your advice to the guy that loses this election? One of them, after November, is going to the White House. Another one's going to be going home pretty soon. You know what it's like to lose a presidential election. What do you think the advice to them should be?
All depends on what you're going home to. In my case, I was an incumbent governor, and I was going home to a state which had been enjoying enormous economic support and success, but was now being hit by an impending national recession, which for some reason hit both coasts harder than the central part of the country. And I didn't have any time to fool around. I mean, I had to get back. It wasn't an easy couple of years, because all of a sudden the Massachusetts Miracle became something else. But I didn't really have time to feel sorry for myself. I mean, I really had to go back to work and do what a governor's got to do. You know, if it's Romney, I assume he's going to go back to the business world. I don't know. But you know, it's a huge disappointment. In my case, even more so because I had thousands and thousands of volunteers out there who had been working their heads off for me, and you really feel as if you've let them down, especially the young people. And I talked about that in my concession speech. But life goes on. I had another 2 years to complete my gubernatorial term. I've been teaching here at Northeastern University and during the winter at UCLA for the past better than 20 years. I love teaching. I love working with these young people and encouraging them to go into public service. I mean, that's my mission in life these days. And it gives me an opportunity to continue to stay pretty actively involved in both politics and policy making. I'm sorry I didn't make it to the White House. As I say to people, I owe them all an apology. If I'd beaten old man Bush, he'd have never heard of his kid. We wouldn't be in this mess, so blame me. But we're both in our 70s and still going strong, and life is good.
Governor Mike Dukakis, thanks very much for joining us this week.
Now, back to that rather dreary debate, and Romney really did pants Obama, I thought, but I wanted to focus on how it happened. Because Obama had a couple of arguments he clearly wanted to make. The first was that Mitt Romney was going to push through a $5 trillion deficit finance tax cut, largely for the rich. Then Romney came out and just denied it. He said he wouldn't increase the deficit, he wouldn't lower taxes more for the rich than anyone else, and Obama just didn't have a plan B. So he just repeated the charge over and over again. And Romney just kept on denying it. The best part for Romney was, even though it's a complete policy backflip, Romney wasn't even technically lying, because he used some fairly tricky wording I won't bore you with. But the impression all the viewers at home would have gotten was Romney's not going to cut taxes for the rich, it was repeated over and over again, and Obama is a liar. And the same thing happened with financial regulation laws. Obama wanted to argue that Romney was going to repeal Dodd-Frank without replacing it. And Romney just changed his policy on the spot. And Obama didn't know what to do. By contrast, Romney was surprisingly flexible, especially for him. He adapted his arguments to whatever Obama said. And it was why Romney looked like he dominated the debate, even though he actually spoke for 4 less minutes. And that's why the only thing Democrats want to talk about now is this.
I'm sorry, Jim. I'm going to stop the subsidy to PBS. I'm going to stop other things. I like PBS. I love Big Bird. I actually like you too. But I'm not going to keep on spending money on things to borrow money from China to pay for.
And Obama, he had a very good line today about that, I thought.
I mean, thank goodness somebody is finally getting tough on Big Bird. It's about time. We didn't know that Big Bird was driving the federal deficit.
And of course, Obama's right. Cutting PBS funding would save next to nothing. And Romney hasn't detailed any serious cuts out of the trillions of dollars he needs to save. But Obama didn't think of that line yesterday, and that's when he needed it. Debate over. Now, you may be wondering where I get all these graphs for the show from on the laptop. Well, the truth is I read lots and lots of blogs. In fact, I get all my information from blogs. I don't even read newspapers anymore. But on the other hand, I'm weird. So how do the old and new media fit together for the real world in 2012? And what effect might both have on the election? Tom Scholler is Professor of Political Science at University of Maryland. John Barron caught up with him recently and then promptly blogged about it.
We hear a lot of talk, certainly from Republicans. They say the mainstream media is biased. Is it fair to say that the majority of reporters covering this election are probably going to vote for Barack Obama? They want him to win?
Look, I think the national media, when it comes to social issues, gay marriage, abortion, the media tends to be liberal. But you have to remember that the owners are not always liberal, and the publishers and editors aren't always that liberal. And when it comes to big matters like taxation and war and peace, the media is often not liberal at all. The Washington Post and the New York Times, considered the liberal cornerstones of the American national media that lead the national coverage, the papers that the other news outlets follow, advocated for the Iraq War, one of the most unpopular and one of the most foolhardy public policy decisions of the last 40 years.
Is there something particularly about Barack Obama that appeals to the media? Because certainly John McCain felt it in 2008, Hillary Clinton felt it in 2008. The media just loves this guy. He gets the rock star treatment and maybe a free ride on some issues that should have been looked into.
Yeah, I think there's something captivating about his story in a way that other candidates just simply don't have that biography. But you know, Hillary Clinton lost that primary more than Barack Obama won it, though he certainly did some things to out-strategize her and was tactically smarter and a better fundraiser than she was. So I think it was her campaign to lose, and she figured out a way to lose it.
What has this presidential campaign revealed about changes in established media and also the way that social media is feeding into that in campaign coverage and the way that stories are getting out? It seems to be a lot of gaffes that seem sort of to fit a tweet that are now becoming mainstream news.
That's right. I mean, I think, you know, the new media, you might think of it as the mortar in between the bricks. I think the major media, the traditional media, still drive the national narrative. And, of course, the traditional media have adopted new media forms. You go and read a Washington Post piece in the physical paper in Washington where I live, but there's also an online version, and you can Tumblr it, or you can tweet it around, or you can email it to a friend, or you can Facebook like it. So, and of course, they have their online only, WashingtonPost.com only reporters who write only for the online venture. So the new media has really been suffused by and in a sort of folded into the traditional or old media in order to survive, if for no other reasons than for financial reasons. We don't really have state-run media. We have privately owned, profit-oriented media, and in order to stay afloat, they have to adapt and adopt many of the forms of the new media.
With all of those new platforms dovetailing with the old, it would suggest that there's potential for there to be different stories being covered in greater depth for specialised publications. Is that what's actually happening?
Yeah, I think what we saw in the early part of the last decade with the rise of bloggers, that there was a lot of noise out there, people blogging from their basement in their underwear, as the cliche would be, but there also turned out to be a lot of substantial bloggers who became national media voices. I used to write for 538.com, which was started by Nate Silver. It's considered one of the, if not the best, statistical analytical sites, now run and housed by the New York Times. Nate, before that, ran the site at 538.com under his own franchise, and before that he was a blogger for the Daily Kos. Josh Marshall, though under his own name, not under a pseudonym, Nate used to use a pseudonym, Poblano, for Hot Peppers. He didn't even do it with his own name. Josh Marshall started Talking Points Memo after his blogging career was really launched into the stratosphere following the Florida recount, which he was reporting from the ground. So I think the traditional news, print, television, radio reporters have learned to respect those who have earned that respect in the blogging community and the online community as their equals when they merit that.
Earlier in the year, we had Andrew Kaczynski from BuzzFeed on the program, who seems to be sort of pioneering a new kind of research-based video journalism, going through YouTube clips endlessly to find something. More recently, Jimmy Carter's grandson found that 47% clip of Mitt Romney. What are we seeing emerging here?
Well, we're seeing people that are sort of niche journalists, right? Andrew's task is to do a lot of deep searching on public records and videos. He's basically an oppo researcher like campaigns use, but doing it in a public forum as opposed to publishing his opposition research internally for the campaign that has hired him. That's his training. And so that's what we're seeing. People who do have special skills, whether it's econometric analysis like 538 or Andrew Kaczynski doing research kind of stuff, who have carved out little parts of the news media in that mortar that the BRICS had overlooked, and filling in those gaps where the national media and the traditional media simply didn't do those things or didn't have people doing them well enough.
Increasingly, it seems that with the focus nature, ideological focus of whether it's Fox News on the right or MSNBC on the left, and all the blogs out there that really tailor to particular prejudices, biases, interests, and so on, that there seems to be a reinforcing happening of people's opinions, that the sort of the centrist approach in journalism is out of fashion. What impact is this having? Is it affecting the political process at this point?
No, I think that's exactly right, John. We have seen a self-selection effect where people gravitate toward particularly commentary sources and even news sources that reaffirm and conform their existing views and biases. And I guess in some ways that's a negative effect. The upside of that is that we have a pluralistic media where people can self-select and become engaged with different voices coming from different parts of the ideological spectrum. But yes, the downside of that is that people increasingly are not hearing neutral voices, or certainly voices from the other side, because if you're a liberal, you're watching MSNBC, and if you're a conservative, you're watching Fox. And then when pollsters come and ask you, some basic things about the state of the nation, or whether global warming is happening, or whether evolution is real, or whether Obama or Mitt Romney is more responsible for killing Osama bin Laden, you get a completely different set of answers because they're listening to a different set of media. In fact, there was a poll of Ohio Republicans when asked who is more responsible for killing Osama bin Laden, like 40% of Republicans said they didn't know, Romney or Obama, as if somehow Romney had some role in it. I mean, that may just be because they give Obama zero credit for it, but I'm waiting for the poll that says 40% of Republicans polled in some state aren't sure who's more responsible for fathering Malia and Sasha, Mitt Romney or Barack Obama. I mean, we're getting to the point where there aren't even an agreed-upon set of facts in American politics, and that's a very dangerous thing.
Tom Shaler, thanks for joining us.
Great to be here, John.
Well, joining us at the roundish table was supposed to be the former leader of the Federal Liberal Party, John
Live
Hewson.
TV.
Oh, the perils of live television. Of course, we thought he would be terrific because he's no stranger to campaign debates, and we talked to him a lot about the debate.
Then he found out what show he was going on, so he decided not to come on.
I was on and John wasn't, so he cancelled. No, the truth is he's stuck in traffic, literally just a few blocks from the ABC. Chaz says that he should just leave his car in the traffic and run to the studio, but alas, he has not.
Priorities.
So we're going to chat amongst ourselves, of course, with Chaz, and of course, luckily we've got John Barron still in our Washington bureau. But
we will fight back, don't worry.
Indeed. Chaz, I'm going to start with you.
Yep.
67 million people watched that debate, and Mitt Romney, he's emailed supporters today saying victory is in sight. Do you think that this now means that the Republicans are on a winner?
No, I don't, to be honest.
Doesn't this mean Romney is now a plausible possible president as a result?
Look, we were saying this last week, and I haven't changed my mind, that Romney needed to do really well in the debate just to stay in the game. He literally had donors pulling out this week before the debate, saying we're just going to donate to congressional candidates because you've got no chance. So he needed a big performance just to stay credible, and that's where he is now. He's credible. He's certainly not the favourite, that's for sure. The fundamentals haven't changed. The ads haven't changed. The money hasn't changed. Now he's sending out these emails to get more money because he needs more money, and to get the enthusiasm from the Tea Party and from his donors, etc. So I don't think this makes much of a difference. Obviously, the media is going to try and make it look like it's different. Nick Bryan said last week they try and push for a winner, they push for a new interesting storyline.
That's right.
But
well, the debate didn't give them one, so they're making one. John Barron in DC, do you think now that Mitt Romney is radiating the confidence of somebody who's prepared to sit in the Oval Office?
Well, he certainly looked presidential on that stage, on level terms with Barack Obama the other night. He passes that threshold test, but in a way he always did. He was the central casting candidate. You'd cast him if he was an actor as a president in a movie. You know, he looks presidential, but he also has proven to be not a great campaigner, to say the most. He has been gaffe prone, and this is probably a concern for Republicans. They are feeling more buoyant this week that that suddenly what was at the start of the week was really had a campaign that had the stench of death about it, now has that sniff of victory. They know that this isn't enough, that this is the early swallow of the spring. He has to have a fantastic final month if he's going to be able to close the gap. But the first polls are out, guys. These are the first post-debate polls. One's come through from Reuters Ipsos, and it has Romney gaining 2% immediately after the debate. He's still 5% behind Barack Obama in this poll, but it's Obama 48, Romney 43. But importantly, and this could be crucial, Romney's positive rating has gone above 50%. It was down around 40%. It's now 51%. That could be crucial. And also, his favourability with his fellow Republicans is up a full 10% just after that debate performance. 46% of Republicans now view Romney very favourably, and that is his highest very favourable rating amongst his own side since he sealed the nomination. So some really good signs for Mitt Romney. I think you're right, Chaz. I think that still chances are Barack Obama is going to win in November, but those chances got just a little bit more even today.
John, we talked last week about how when you look at the last 20 years in polling, the debates tend to not make much of a difference. When you were watching that debate the other night, did you think to yourself this is a performance that's actually going to influence the polls in the long run?
You know, it was possibly, Chaz, the best performance by a Republican presidential candidate since Governor Ronald Reagan beat Jimmy Carter in 1980 and went on to win the election. It was a one-off debate that year, and it was one of the perhaps few that really did make a difference. And Mitt Romney did very, very well. But also, it was a case of Barack Obama doing very, very poorly. Mike Dukakis, in the interview we saw earlier in the show, he hinted at it. Dukakis is still very close to David Axelrod. He mentioned off-air but wouldn't mention on-air that Axe, he talks to Axe about these kinds of things, and he said that, you know, the advice to Obama was that he needed to not show his contempt for Romney. Apparently he hates the guy. It's not as friendly as it appeared in that handshake. Right. He was to not show his contempt, so he was avoiding eye contact. Ironically, in much the same way as John McCain did 4 years ago, when he wouldn't even look at Barack Obama. He wouldn't even name him. He said, "This one," rather than even looking at him or talking to him.
But John,
Obama got a case of that himself.
This is really interesting about the expectations that the Democrat camp has painted about this debate, because they spent all week, several weeks, lowering expectations, and Barack Obama well and truly slid in there and met exactly the expectations of his camp. And yet now the Obama camp is saying, oh, we didn't expect Mitt Romney to be so dishonest and we're going to change strategy, and it was a deliberate tactic not to attack him for the 47% result. His comment that he's made. So did they miscalculate the Obama camp?
Well, certainly, Kim, as a tactical salvo goes, the Republicans won this week, hands down. The Democrats now have to decide how to come back in the second debate. You can do that. Ronald Reagan had a very bad first debate in '84 against Walter Mondale. He came back in the second debate and was a winner and stayed president in a landslide. That's what Obama is hoping for, and there's every chance that he could do that. But for right now, all of the spin is working towards Mitt Romney.
All right, John Barron in DC. You're watching Planet America.
I don't know how he let Romney get away with the crap he threw out tonight about Social Security. Where was Obama tonight? He should watch. Well, not just hardball, Rachel should watch you. He should watch the Reverend Al. He should watch Lawrence. He would learn something about this debate. There's a hot debate going on in this country. You know where it's being held? Here, on this network, is where we're having the debate. We have our knives out. We go after the people and the facts. What was he doing tonight? He went in there disarmed. He was like, oh, wait, an hour and a half, I think I can get through this thing, and I don't even look at this guy. Where's Romney? I love the split screen. Staring at Obama, addressing him like the prey. He did it just right. I'm coming out an incumbent. I got to beat him. You got to beat the champ, and I'm going to beat him tonight. And I don't care what this guy moderator, whatever he thinks he is, because I'm going to ignore him. What was Romney doing? He was winning.
Well, he's here. He's made it. The former leader of the Federal Liberal Party, John Hewson, abandoned his car, ran to the studio. He joins us now for a very quick chat. John Hewson, we've been talking about the presidential debate, of course, and what did you make of it? Do you declare Mitt Romney a clear winner?
Look, I think he won on style. He certainly didn't win on substance or passion or conviction, but he won on style. I guess if you look at what Obama tried to do, I guess he tried to close it down. And not make any mistakes, and I think he succeeded in doing that. But I guess Romney looked better, but generally I was underwhelmed. As somebody who's genuinely interested in policy, I couldn't find any anywhere. You know, and the America's right now sort of war-weary. They've got a flat economy. They've got the fiscal cliff coming, which will, you know, send them into recession if they don't respond to it properly. They're losing their standing in the world. You were looking for a bit of leadership. You didn't get it from either side.
It seemed to me that the times when Obama tried to explain policy, there were a few occasions he did, and he kind of stuffed it up. Like, he actually didn't explain it very well, and people were criticising afterwards. Is that something that doesn't work in debates?
I kind of remembered the birthday cake example in my own experience. He was struggling with the detail, I thought, on a couple of occasions when, you know, he's known for the simple quip, the one-liner. And today he was out there, you know, with clever one-liners, and his timing was perfect, and sort of in the debate he was very flat. But I think, you know, people were looking for Romney to do a bit more, to actually, you know, finger him, to have the big zinger in there, and there was nothing really. So he won marginally. It'll probably give him a 1 or 2 point lift in the polls for now, but Obama's been, you know, 5 or 6 points ahead pretty consistently. I don't think he can be beaten by Romney. I think Romney will have his day in the sun, and between now and the election itself, I think he'll probably go back to where he started.
But speaking from experience, you know, how much behind-the-scenes readjustment is the Obama campaign going to have to do? How much panic might have set in after that performance?
Oh, look, I think the staff would be panicking. I'm not sure about Obama. I think, you know, I think people misunderstood his strategy. I think he really did go in there to sort of close it down. Just a confident performance. He stumbled a bit. But, you know, I guess they will go for a more decisive performance next time. Simpler answers, shorter answers. I mean, explanation does a hell of a lot of good in these circumstances rather than your eloquence. And in that sense, I think Obama could do a good job on both fronts. And, you know, Romney's up there now. He's to be beaten. And so I think it's an open contest in terms of the debate. Does it matter? I don't think the debates probably matter that much. I mean, people have made up their mind, and not too many people are going to switch from Obama to Romney as a result of the debate.
Well, John Hewson, I know your time was very, very short. You're out of breath, and we're out of time. That's all for now. John Barron will be back in the studio next week when he'll catch up with the former Republican presidential candidate Gary Bauer, and we'll leave you tonight with the latest Obama rap with a nod to Jay-Z.
Yeah, but don't worry, we've bleeped the shit out of it. Oh, did we bleep shit just then? Anyway, sorry. See ya.
Ain't one. With all your bank problems, I feel bad for you, son. I got 99 problems. I admit, not one hit me. Criminal, fraud, repression, deceit. I murder and I plunder for the world's elite. We invade countries, so we have all the wrong.
I have a dream.
Well, I have a drone.